And we are live. Welcome to Olivia's Stories, ladies and gentlemen. Story number 1.
My bride-to-be was cheating on me when we were supposed to be getting married. As a person who prides myself in perfection, I had never imagined finding myself in this situation. She had been sharing her bed with other men while I was preparing my mind for a wedding. The discovering that my wife-to-be of 6 months was cheating on me had almost weighed me down. But luckily for me, I wasn't a fool that believed in love, and I saw women for what they always were: liars. However, I had thought that I had everything about this woman figured out. Heck, that's why I had proposed. Not because of love or anything weird like emotions. I had also thought I had absolute control when it came to my relationship with her. But she goes and proves me right. I say right because I have never been wrong. I guess I could say I always expected this. Expected there to be a hitch in my relationship with women. Trust me, it began from when I was little. I was made to never rely on a woman's word because, as I said before, they were all liars. I had only decided to marry my fiancée because she seemed a tad bit different from the rest. Emphasis on tad bit. And I really thought she couldn't get the best of me. I should have trusted my instincts. Women were one and truly the same, and my friends had laughed their asses off when I had told them of my problem. So I have come to you Redditors for a solution. My wife-to-be was a hardcore career woman. A seasoned businesswoman whose 80% of her business transactions involved traveling and meeting people from all walks of life. This could sometimes take the whole weekdays, leaving her with only weekends for other things. I had advised her shortly after I had proposed to stop her work, as I was well-to-do and could take care of her. This she had strongly refused, always claiming to be an independent lady. Mind you, that's not how I met her when we started dating. I hate not being in control, and I told her to quit. But now I see the reason why she had refused to leave her job. That's because she was sharing another man's bed under the pretext of traveling for business. I had no idea how I had never looked into whatever she was doing. I had overlooked because I had thought everything was going well. Our wedding plans were already underway, and she goes ahead to do that. Can you imagine the audacity of women? They're all the same, professing their undying love and devotion and accepting your ring 1 minute, then sharing another man's bed the next. Just like I had said earlier, weekends are the only time available for us to see and continue our wedding plans. She had accepted her job once we had started discussing about getting married. I hadn't thought much of a to-be wedded couple not spending time together. I mean, we had the rest of our lives to spend together, so I hadn't protested her job at first. But when it became something she carried on her head always, I began to complain. I am a man, of course. I have needs. Needs she was supposed to be satisfying, but she had taken it upon herself to become Forbes' most independent fiancé, coming up with excuses left and right. Stupid excuses now that I think about them. Terribly stupid excuses that I should have seen right through. When did I begin to notice something was off about her attitude? The day we were supposed to go cake tasting, and then she called to say she won't be able to make it back from wherever her work had taken her. This woman had slied me, and she had sounded breathless while at it, like she had just finished tumbling in the sheets or she was getting ready to begin. And I had taken it at that moment. That's what irks me. I hadn't demanded that she come home immediately. I had just said okay and thought of way to reschedule cake tasting. It's like our positions had switched and I was the one with the apron around my neck, baking cookies and rescheduling cake tasting. She was undermining my mojo. Well, I wouldn't have even come to this realization that something was off if not for the signs. The various signs. After that incident, I began to take note of the signs, although not consciously, but at the back of my head. I was storing them there. We always spent most weekends together when she was done traveling around the world. On some days, it seemed like her facade would slip and she'll start giving me attitude. From talking back at me to replying me under her breath to thinking she ought to have a say in everything. It was like she was changing overnight and her true colors were beginning to show. It seemed the man she was sharing her bed with was giving her some courage. If not for the signs, I would have never given it a place in my heart to suspect that my wife-to-be was cheating on me. So I decided to look into it. But before I go into that, let me tell you a little bit of myself and how I had met my fiancée and got up to the stage of proposing. My name is Steve. I am 31 years old, 6'5" tall, heavily built and athletic, handsome and easily attract the opposite sex. I'm not bragging, this is just who I am. And it takes an assertive man, someone who knows who they are and what they want, to be able to conquer the world. I hold shares with top IT company in the States, and I'm building a startup. My life may sound novel and one for the books, but I'm simply an ambitious and confident man. My fiance's name is Nuella, and she's 28 years old. I met my wife to be at a mutual friend's get-together party. I'll say what had attracted me to her was that out of the 10 pretty women that were at the party, she was among the 3 that didn't flaunt herself in front of me. Given that the other 2 were already married, she was the only one that didn't light up like she had seen a money bag when she saw me. And the fact that she was also beautiful too. Those were the things that drew me to her. She ticked all the boxes of a beautiful woman. Hair, eyes, chin, stature, and she carried herself with this elegant grace. She was the price at the party, and she knew it. This is why I and the other men at the party were attracted to her, but like attracts like, and she found her way to me. After that, we began to see more of each other at various events. We ran in the same groups, it had seemed. She was friends with my friends, so of course my friends matched us. Every party I was invited to, she was somehow there. And every party she was invited to, my friends made sure I was there too. I got to know she was in her 3rd year in college at Florida State University studying business administration. So not only was she pretty, she was also smart and respectful of my every decision during the few times we hung out. At the time, she was 24 and I was 27, and not getting any younger according to my mother, who had been hassling me at that time to enter a serious relationship. Well, that's how I and Nuella started dating. During our dating days, we were known as the power couple among our friends. I hadn't began dating my fiancé because of love, and she knew. That's why we made the power couple. There wasn't some sappy emotion getting in the way of our goals. I wanted a relationship and could provide. She also wanted a relationship and needed someone that could provide. The cherry on top? She was obedient and never questioned my decisions. So I made sure she was well cared for while we were dating. During her graduation 2 years later, I attended alongside her parents, and that's when I proposed. While we were having dinner at my home in front of her family and our mutual friends, I popped out a ring. No, I didn't kneel because that would have been degrading of my character, but I asked in the most polite manner. Her parents were there after all. I didn't want them to think their daughter would be marrying someone who couldn't care for her. Most of my friends had thought I had gone and fallen in love. They had termed it the unemotional Steve gains his first emotion, but they didn't know I wasn't proposing out of love, but out of a sense of responsibility for my family. I hadn't really cared for the emotion love. I still don't, by the way. Imagine what state I would have been in if I had been in love and she cheated on me. Lol, I would probably have keeled over like a weak man with a 70-plus heart. Well, after I had proposed, that's when my fiancé went and accepted the job offer that set about this chain of terrible events. The day she had accepted the job, she had seemed so pleased and couldn't wait to start despite my warnings about her discarding the job. According to her, the job was the first real thing she had ever gotten from her hard work and sweat, and she would just test the waters with it. As someone who loves control, I should probably have dismissed any talks of her accepting the job then and there, but she was a person and had the right to choose for herself, so I let her. I thought that after testing the waters and seeing how harsh the employment world was, she would quit after 2 weeks. But it seemed she was enjoying her freedom even more because after 6 months of testing the waters, she had the audacity to test other men in her bed. The little witch. Enough of the background story and on to how I had caught my fiancé cheating on me on one of her business trips. I hate being played for a fool, but my fiancé played me like a violin expert. Like I had told you all earlier, I began noticing some signs that something was off. The prolonged work trips, the distancing, the attitude, everything was as clear as daylight. So like I said, I had to look into it to see if it was just me being overbearing. She was slowly turning me into a nagging person. Luckily, I came across an old college friend of mine. We used to see each other in the library almost at the same time, so from there we had become study buddies, although we didn't have the same majors. Anyway, we had lost contact since we had graduated, and I just happened to bump into him during one of my stops at Starbucks to get a coffee. Turned out he was a private investigator now, and I teased about our college days. We began meeting up often, and I thought that maybe he could help me with my problems. I told him about my concerns about my fiancée and told him all about how her business trips were becoming suspicious. He gave me a simple test to carry out on her anytime I had the opportunity to do so. The opportunity to test out what he had told me came about a month later. During one of the weekends my fiancée deemed it fit to come back from her business trips, the test naturally took place even without my planning it. She had left her handset in the sitting room when it rang. I wanted to get her the device when she appeared from the door, and with the phone in my hand told me that I had no right to sneak through her things and what had happened to her privacy. This was someone I was supposed to marry in 3 weeks. My fiancé had the audacity to say I was doing too much in our relationship. This was also the same person who always agreed to everything I do and respected my decisions. In her own words, my domineering control was beginning to get to her in our relationship, and it was becoming annoying. She even threatened to take a walk out of the marriage if I continued to behave like that and literally stomped out of the room. I mean, she had stomped her feet out of the room in a tantrum like a toddler, just because I had wanted to hand over her phone that was ringing. I hadn't even gotten a look at who was calling because she had snatched it out of my hands like a guilty witch. To say that I was shocked stupid by my fiancé's outburst would be stating the obvious. In fact, I was dazed and left at a loss for words. Even now, as I recall the events, I can still feel the shock traveling up my spine. For the first time in my life since I had become old enough to know right from wrong, a woman had gotten the best of me. Do you know what was even worse? She claimed I had behaved weirdly, and as a result decided to stay away for a week. She stayed away from me for a week. No calls, no texts, not even a bird with a note. It was in that week, as I replayed the events that had led up to it, to come to the conclusion that she was cheating on me. It was as obvious as a slap on my cheek. And that's how I had felt. Like I had been slapped. I just had to prove that she was cheating. The only way I could do that and be sure was to enlist the help of someone I trusted, and who better than the person who had made me see clearly. I couldn't trust my other friends with this news because they all probably thought I was happily in love. Heck, my wedding was supposedly to be in 2 weeks. Well, there wasn't going to be a wedding after all. I called my old college friend and we met up at our usual spot. Then I told him all the events that had happened, from how the phone test's opportunity had fallen into my lap and the reactions I got from my cheating fiancée after. I even told him how she didn't even speak to me for a whole week because of that. That was how I hired my friend to trail my fiancée on her business trip a week before our supposed wedding week. Of course, she didn't know there wasn't going to be any wedding longer, although I'm sure she was hoping on that. How could someone cut off a person they were supposed to be getting married to for a whole week before the wedding? How could someone even be okay with going away for week-long trips when she was about to get married? Well, I finally knew the answers. She was okay with it because whoever she was, Gudasi was worth it, and I was just a worthless piece of trash who gave her a ring on her finger. At the end of the week, it was established beyond all doubt that my fiancé was cheating on me. And do you all want to guess with who? I couldn't believe it myself when I was told. It turned out she was having all those weekdays and weekend trysts with her first love, whom she happened to meet in another town during one of her numerous travels. According to my PI friend, my fiancé had a lover right from her college days before we started dating. At least it hadn't been right underneath my nose. That would have made me more madder than I already was. My PI friend dropped evidence to attest to my wife to B's movement with her lover that included pictures of them in romantic outing in a beach, flocking together in hotels. My friend even pulled evidence of extracted text and video messages between my cheating fiancé and her lover in the past 3 months. The text that she had been so jumpy for me to see was right on my fingertips, and my anger was hot enough to prepare popcorn. To say I was beyond livid was an understatement. I hated being played above anything else, and she had the audacity to pretend. Growing up with 4 brothers was a big eye-opener to me. As young boys, no day passes without competitions amongst us in trying to prove who is more masculine. This continued on, and as a result grew into a competition will be more attractive to the opposite sex. One constant and recurring factor then was that I always beat them all. I could never be played. I prided myself in always being ahead of my peers, and now a woman had managed to play me. My fiancée was the only woman who I had allowed close to my heart. I didn't trust women in general, as I had stated earlier, and now I had finally let someone in, and she goes ahead to play me like a toy. One thing was for certain: she wasn't going to get away with it. I wasn't going to sit still and watch her play me for a fool. This was what she was going to continue with when we got married, or it seemed she was planning to jilt me at the altar, because I couldn't even begin to understand how she planned on continuing her charade and how long she planned to continue it. Well, one thing was for certain: I was still going to go ahead with the wedding. Everything was already in place: the cake, the food, the venue. Stopping the wedding now would be an embarrassment to my name, and the person I wanted to shame was my cheating fiancé. And besides, I hated to waste money. Our wedding day came, and I confirmed that my fiancé didn't plan to jilt me at the altar. In fact, she had seemed excited for the wedding, if the events of the past week were anything to judge by. She had come home and began to act all loving and sweet, agreeing with everything I said, doing her wifely duties. She had even gotten me a gift to celebrate our coming nuptials. Lol. If only she knew what was coming to her. There would be no wedding. I was going to make sure that she would regret ever deciding to cheat on me. The priest began to recite the vows and asked my fiancée to repeat after him. She happily said her vows, even having the mind to look me in the eye with emotion and say how much she loved me and how she couldn't wait to spend the rest of her life with me. All lies. The way she lied so perfectly well was something that colleges needed to put on as one of the courses to be studied. So smooth, with no hitch or even loss of eye contact. When it came to my turn, I kept silent as the priest began to recite the vows, and the murmurs began immediately. You all should have seen as the color bleached from my fiancé's face. She had turned ghost white behind pounds of makeup that had been caked into her face. The priest began the vows again, his face confused, and I still kept silent. When the priest stopped trying, I took the mic from him and announced that there will be no wedding, but my guests were free to enjoy the food and the premium entertainment in the reception hall. It was comical watching the look on my cheating fiancé's face. The real disgrace hadn't even begun. I scanned through the crowd, and as expected, she dared invite her lover to come be witness her wedding. Well, less work for me trying to find the man. I walked away with my fiancé standing at the altar and left. Update 2. Hi Redditors. I know most of you have been wondering what happened next after I found out my fiancé was cheating on me and left her at the altar, and if she had tried to get in contact with me. A lot of you were probably wondering if I had confronted her or what I had done. This is a follow-up update on my experience with my cheating fiancé. After I jilted her at the altar with no reason, I had blocked her and every of my friend and went about my business for a year. I guess you could say I gave her breathing space to forget about me. But I didn't forget about her. I had a lot in store for her. I still hadn't planned on how I would play like she had tried to play during the first 3 months of my hiatus from my cheating fiancé. However, it had come to me as a notification for her birthday popped up on my phone screen. I was going to play her big time. Thanks to my friend, I still kept tabs on my ex-fiancé and her whereabouts and doings. She was no longer traveling the world like she was doing when we were about to get married, and there was no sign of her first lover in sight. It seemed he had also jilted her as I did. Smart man. Losing credibility in front of another man over a woman was a foolish move. Men ruled the world, not women. And I believed he had also been played too, if I recall the look on his face at the wedding. He looked like he couldn't believe his love was getting married. She had played the two of us, and she was definitely going to get what was coming for her. First up was her job. My friend had related to me that she had lost her job. I might have had something to do with that. It was just a simple submission of evidence of her neglecting her work duties and frolicking with her lover. I didn't know if that was all that it took for them to fire her from her job, but it served the purpose. She still got fired. It was, however, just the tip of the iceberg. I had planned on isolating her from her close friends and family by showing them the two-timer that she was. It just irks me that I hadn't noticed it all those times. Well, while I thought of my plan to humiliate her, I froze every access she had to my accounts. With no job, she had probably thought there was still hope with her having access to my credit cards. Lol. Not on my watch. I was going to strip away every bit of control she had. She was going to feel humiliated. Like I said earlier, the plan came to me when I got a notification of her birthday. By this time, she had already lost her job and didn't have any access to my accounts. This was the time where she'll need someone to be by her side. And it struck me. What if I become that person? And I did. I opened up new social media accounts and sent her friend requests on each one. When she had accepted my friend request, I sent her a text that said I wanted to get to know her, and that's how we started talking. However, she didn't know it was I she was talking to. My username was David, and I was from up north on my profile. I was a middle-aged banker who was looking to have new friend. So she thought she was talking to a David, and she fell for it. As predicted. We continued chatting over the phone over the course of the year, and during one of those times I decided to drop a bomb question and ask if she had been married before. And I'm sure you've already guessed her answer to that question. Once a liar, always a liar. I had even made the question specific in case she tried to twist it. I had asked if she had been nearly married or even had a boyfriend. But my gullible ex-fiancé had lied her head off that she hadn't dated since she left college. Lol. I guess I was that quick to be forgotten. But she won't forget me for long. She would remember me soon enough. During the course of our chat, my ex-fiancé went ahead and fell in love. According to her, she had been so lonely when I had come into her life, and I knew how to treat a woman properly. In my head, she was spilling a whole lot of trash. Trash talk, because I knew the next opportunity she saw, she was going to find a way to cheat. There was a reason why I never trusted women. Even my own mother lied. I decided to play along and have fun at her expense. Our year was almost up and I needed a way to test if she was being truthful. Lol, even relating the word to anything my ex-fiancé made me want to hurl. She wasn't going to change, but I had to test her before making my plan complete. I know you all on this platform would think I'm taking it too far with her, that since I've ghosted her, I should probably move on with my life. But if I do that, my ex-fiancé was probably going to do the same thing to the next unsuspecting man that comes her way. She wasn't going to learn without a lesson being taught, and I couldn't let her go after she had taken me for granted. That wasn't going to happen. I didn't want the next person to have to plan out a revenge that I could have gotten to. Well, I wasn't going to do too much. I had left her at the altar with no repercussion, and I strongly feel she was going to pull the same stunt on David, so I had to test her out. As David, I agreed to us dating and entering into an exclusive relationship. This was how I was going to test her. A year has gone by and I decided to come back into my ex-fiancé's life, but not as the boyfriend she claimed to love, but as the groom that had jilted her at the altar. My true self. I couldn't believe my mind could be as twisted as this. Well, I couldn't have acquired so many shares in top companies without being smart. And like I said, I like to be ahead of my peers. My mind had been sharpened from an early age. I sent a text to my ex-fiancé and asked that we meet up in our usual cafe. I got there early, ahead of the scheduled time, so I would be able to see the reaction on her face when she walked in. This way, she didn't have the chance to hide the expression on her face when she saw me. And, you wouldn't guess it, Redditors, her experience was one for the books when she walked into the cafe and saw me. It was pure shock before she hid her emotions. She had thought I was done with her. She didn't know the game was just beginning with me, and I intended to have my fun. We talked, asking each other how we've been for the past year, and I once again asked her if there was anyone in her life at the moment, and of course she lied once again. At the moment, I began thinking if she could easily slip out lies like that, it meant she had been lying to me throughout our whole relationship. Then I dropped the bomb. I told her I wanted to go ahead with the wedding. I had shocked my ex-fiancé twice within an hour. But she didn't refuse my proposal. She had even looked excited at the idea of being a bride again. She was so predictable. The little witch was as predictable as they come, and I was sick of it. My plan was falling into place, Redditors. She had fallen for the trap, and I wasn't going to hold back in showing her people how she had been while we were engaged to be married. And this time she was doing it again. I told you all she wasn't going to change if she wasn't called out or taught a lesson. This was someone that had confessed her love to David before meeting with me, and she was accepting to wear my ring again. Trying to dupe the two of us at the same time once again. Do you guys know she even had the audacity to ask me why I had left her at the altar? She had the mind to ask why I didn't want to marry her then, and now I wanted to marry her. The way she put it, like she thought I was mad, but at least I wanted her in my madness. She probably thought she was so likable that I came back begging after a year later. I didn't deem her worthy of a response. She could think whatever she wanted. Well, We began planning the wedding. I told her it was to be in 2 weeks and she was to plan everything by herself. That was her punishment for leaving me to plan the last wedding. By the end of the 2 weeks, I fixed a meeting as David with her. Our very first meeting to celebrate 9 months of getting to know each other. Throughout the 2 weeks it took to plan another fake wedding, she didn't even show she was in love with another man or she was having conversations with another man. She treated me like an egg, all loving and caring and disgusting. You needed to be there to witness the change in her character. But I knew what was behind the facade. I couldn't be fooled twice. Heck, I couldn't even be fooled once, but I had slipped up and had paid for it. Now it was time for her to pay all she had done. The day of the wedding came and we exchanged our vows in front of the fake priest whom I had hired to oversee the ceremony. I had also faked my signature on the marriage certificate because there was no way I was getting married to the lying witch, not even by mistake. Time for the reception and my wife had suddenly disappeared from her bridal suite. Of course I knew where she was. She was planning on meeting up with David at the very same hotel. I had arranged it so the meeting would happen in the very same place my wedding reception was supposed to be happening. I had even hired a guy to act as David, all to catch her in the act. Everyone began looking for the bride, and I got a call that she was in the room. I connected my phone to a projector in the wedding reception hall where our guests were already seated. My ex-fiance's face came on the screen with the guy I had hired to be David, and her words were loud enough for everyone to hear. She confessed her love to David on screen in front of all the guests we had invited, and I could finally breathe. Everything had come into play. My guests began murmuring immediately and the projector was disconnected. I sent people to go fetch my wife for our reception. The amount of fun I was having, you all needed to see how everything had played out. My ex-fiancée decided to grace the reception hall, not knowing the disgrace she had brought upon herself. Once she entered, I connected my phone to the projector that was supposed to be showing goodwill messages from our friends and family towards our marriage and showed the evidence of her cheating on me before our wedding day. Luckily, I hadn't invited my family to this second disaster of a wedding. It was only my few friends I had invited and left the remainder of the guest list up to her. So the hall was filled to the brim with her people witnessing what a two-timer she was. I decided to replay her conversation in the hotel room with David again, and watched how the color drained from her face with shock. That color was the color of sweet victory. Next time she wasn't going to try to play men, and if she did, her friends would surely call her out on it. One thing was for certain, she wasn't going to be getting married again anytime soon, at least not in front of this crowd that had just witnessed her true colors. Except she moved to a different country. My ex-fiance's life was totally ruined in front of the people she called her family and friends. I took the fake wedding certificate and tore it in front of her. I walked up to her and showed her the chats. I showed her that I was the Dave she was supposed to meet at the hotel room. I even showed her the recent texts of her telling me to wait until later that night before we could meet. I wondered how she had planned to sneak out of the house on our wedding night when she had sent the text. But I guess nothing could ever stop a two-timer from showing her ways. However, I had dealt her a big lesson that she was surely not going to forget in a long time. If she was, and I hope she was going to stop playing mind games with people. After that day, I never heard from my ex-fiancée again, and I was happy and content that I had played the player. Hey Redditors, I hope you've gotten to learn a thing or two from my experience. I know some of you would think I had gone a little too extreme in dealing with my ex-fiancée, but I have come across people like her more than once or twice in my lifetime. These category of people won't stop until they've been dealt a harsh blow that throws them back into reality. My ex-fiancée thought she was sleek and smart so she could play mind games with anyone. The lesson would serve as a reminder anytime she wants to try it again. Plus, I am now happy with myself from removing myself from her evil claws. It hadn't been a fun experience knowing I was being played for a fool by someone I wanted to marry, but now the experience has made me more self-aware when it comes to dealing with people, male or female. Thank you for sharing in my experience, and I really hope this doesn't happen to you too. Have a lovely day, Redditors.